the opportunity to share some updates from our department. So I will go ahead and get started, and I hope you can see my screen okay. Well, the biggest news is our fearless leader is moving on. Alicia J. Keys has been the cabinet secretary for the past 5 years. Her last day will be July 13th, so next week. Keys plans to take personal time before pursuing opportunities in the private sector, but will remain in New Mexico. She will be greatly missed. So no announcement on her replacement at this point, but stay tuned. I know that they're interviewing people. And in other kind of workforce related news, we are hiring. We have a new office strategy, science and technology program coordinator. We like really long names of the department. This person will be starting on the 24th. This is a brand new position for the Office of Science and Technology. This person will be mainly in charge of science and tech grants. And as you can see on the slide, we have a lot of executive assistant positions available. The Justice, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Office will be hiring an economic transition rep and an executive assistant. So that will be coming soon. So if you know anybody that's interested. In the 2023 legislature passed House Bill 8 to establish a division to focus on growing creative industries in New Mexico. Our department is working on an RFP to hire a consultant to do outreach to communities and create a plan for division, and we'll be sending out a call for proposals with municipalities to apply for the funding. So the Jedi team and our Main Street team are working on the RFP as we speak, and there soon will be a press release, so we'll come out with more details. So that'll be coming very soon. And in other news, our outdoor recreation trails plus grant is open and accepting on a rolling basis. The grants range from $25,000 to $500,000. So if you'd like to learn more, just click on the link provided on the slide. I'll make sure that Jason has all the slides so he can send them to everybody so you can have it for later reference. I just want to quickly wrap up my presentation. I know it's very quick. It's to highlight the regional rep team. We are finally fully staffed. We have 2 reps for each region with the exception of Region 4. We have a stellar team and working to get out to all the different communities out of New Mexico. So if you don't know your rep and you're on, please reach out to me and I'm happy to make the introduction. And lastly, I'm not going to go through all the slide, but this is what the regional rep can help you with if you're a business or a community. LEDA, funded, business retention expansion, regulations, connecting with different resources within our division. So that's the focus of what the reps are eligible for or can help you with. And so with that, I'll go ahead and pass it to Marquita Russell from New Mexico Finance Authority.
Thank you very much. Let me make sure I've got that up. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Jason, for hosting this. It's frankly quite a pleasure of mine to introduce new programs to those that are going to be using it the most. We've spent a while getting our the application together, the policies, working with the board, and I think we're really at a good point to be talking about this today. I'm going to go through a couple of slide decks, but should be plenty of time at the end to ask questions. There we go. So the Opportunity Enterprise Act created this 12-member Opportunity Enterprise Review Board, who we frequently call the OERB. And their job is to prioritize projects for the Finance Authority to fund from the Opportunity Enterprise Fund, which we'll spend time talking about. In doing so, they need to determine what is an Opportunity Enterprise project. So this is a very broad piece of legislation. The purpose of the act was to provide a partnership and a funding program to support local communities in building and investing in commercial spaces to directly support their economic development initiatives. I think that is a very polite way of saying spec buildings not necessarily occupied by their owners, so non-owner occupied facilities. The sponsors asserted during the session that local communities were in the best position to know what they needed to stimulate economic development, foster small business growth, and to bring jobs to their communities. And the examples that they cited during the Act passage included site-ready industrial spaces, manufacturing hubs, commercial kitchens, maker spaces, but also other kinds of commercial facilities such as warehouses or high-tech facilities. I am having a hard time with my slides, so pardon me here. Oh, now I'm there. Now I'm there. The 12-member board. So the 12-member board is created. It has legislative appointments, and those folks have experience in real estate, economic development, building trades. They are a broad-based group. There are also several members of the cabinet and executive functions. And again, their job is to prioritize and recommend projects. They are to work directly with local municipalities and communities to facilitate these projects and to determine ultimately whether the use of the fund that was appropriated to the Finance Authority was a prudent expenditure. And they'll be reporting back annually to the legislature on the use of those funds. As I mentioned earlier, there's an Opportunity Enterprise Fund that was created in NMFA, and it received a $70 million appropriation during the 2002 session. There are several roles in addition to the Opportunity Enterprise Board, the OERB. The Finance Authority provides administrative support to the board. We administer the fund, and we ultimately extend the enterprise assistance, which is one of three tools, either a loan, a guarantee, or what they call lease assistance in the act. And that is where we own the facility. We build and own the facility and lease it out to potential businesses. But we can only do so for projects that have been recommended by the OERB and that meet our underwriting criteria and standards. The Economic Development Department's been given a statutory role in this act, and that is to survey potential partners and projects, to provide outreach to the local governments and to potential partners, and to help solicit applications and interest in the program, and then ultimately to evaluate the potential projects and make recommendations to the board about the suitability of enterprise assistance. I spent a little bit of time at the beginning talking about what the sponsors cited as examples, and I did so because the statute itself is very broad. There are some key definitions that they use that don't give a lot of help to the board in trying to determine specifically what kinds of projects they want to see funded. So in this particular instance, a project has to provide economic development opportunities, which means an advancement of an environmentally sustainable economic development goal of the state as determined by NMFA and in coordination with EDD. It'll include the creation of jobs, the provision of needed services and commodities to a diverse community base across the state, and to increase tax or other revenue collections resulting from the project. So economic development is basically, the economic development opportunity is basically creation or sustenance of an economic development function. The project itself is basically land, building, and equipment to the extent that the building itself needs to be equipped like a commercial facility, commercial kitchen facility. But it's the purchase, planning, designing, anything related to the construction or redevelopment of a project. And again, a project needs to create or expand economic development opportunities within the state. So very broad definitions that are given to us. And ultimately, though we were working with communities to select projects and align projects, the actual Opportunity Enterprise Partner, the one that we'll be sending the enterprise assistance to, needs to be a for-profit or not-for-profit entity. Local governments are not eligible for funding through this program. If you are a local government and you have a project yourself that you are working to sustain, perhaps you've got a community-based commercial kitchen that you want to develop, please come to talk to the Finance Authority. We have other programs, particularly those that are helping communities. So like the Public Project Revolving Fund is a perfect example of a place where you can fund one of these projects if you're a public entity. if you're a private entity and you are looking for funding for your own business, please talk to us about other programs that might be appropriate. You're certainly eligible, as you can see here, if you're a domestic corporation or partnership, limited liability company, nonprofit entity, you'd be eligible to apply, but the application criteria really isn't designed to support owner-occupied facilities. So I just wanted to make that really clear. It looks quite broad, and so anyone could qualify, but you'd be spending a lot of time ultimately for a project that would likely not get funded because of the project prioritization. So this is how the Opportunity Enterprise Board has chosen to prioritize its projects. So there's a 2-application phase. The first is the application that's currently open now, and it basically selects projects based on this criteria. So they're looking, basically a quarter of it is for community impact, which includes direct community support. So we want to see that there's been a lot of work with the community to assure that your project aligns with their key goals and other initiatives. We'll be looking at environmental impact and whether or not the project is a redevelopment project. So 25% for community impact, 25% for job creation and employment elements, which include direct job creation, construction jobs, high wage job creation resulting from the operation of the project, training and apprenticeship points, and then justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. So there's 25 points for that category of job creation and employment. We'll also be looking at applicant need and readiness, again, worth 25 points in total. That's financial soundness of the proposal, qualified development team, leveraging of private capital, what we call the but-for test, which is but for this financing, the project would not be able to proceed, and project readiness. So total of 25 points in that category. And then lastly, business location and industry. We look at project location. The smaller the community, the higher number of points that you get, whether it's a targeted economic development industry, and whether the project itself provides economic diversification. So again, total of 25 points there. There is in the policies that the Opportunity Enterprise Board developed and adopted the more specific criteria relating to this. So you can see the subpoints and the metrics that you have to hit there. And I'll spend a minute towards the end showing you where you can get those resources. Once a project is selected by the Opportunity Enterprise Board, it needs to have at least a minimum of 60 points for the Finance Authority to review it. And it needs to have a moderate readiness. So they have to have, got a site selected. They have to have completed a feasibility study. There are other elements of moderate readiness, but it can't be we want to build a building. We don't really know the size. We think it should be somewhere in this community. It needs to be more specific in order for it to proceed. But ultimately, once it comes to the Finance Authority, we will do our underwriting in the order in which the projects were prioritized and offer one of 3 types of assistance. The loans, which is currently the only program we have operational. Eventually, we will have a guarantee program for those loans that are going to a selected project, but the loan itself is being made by a federally insured financial institution. And then lastly, lease assistance, which again is where NMFA uses the funds to construct the project and to lease out that project to eligible businesses. So in that instance, that's when a community will come forward and say, we have this project. We can't get a developer interested in coming to our community to build this project, but it would be very much helpful for the following reasons. If that's a highly prioritized project, the NMFA can ultimately use those funds, select a contractor or a developer to complete the facility, and then ultimately NMFA would then own the building and lease it out over forever. It seems there is no point at which it turns back to the community. I would note that NMFA cannot make grants from the Opportunity Enterprise Revolving Fund. That is a frequently asked question. So local governments are not eligible to apply, and grants are not eligible for funding from this program. And as I mentioned, we've got the rules for the loan program in place. We prioritized the type of opportunity or enterprise assistance that we thought would be most needed. And so that is the loan program. And again, we'll be working to develop the others as we see strong need for the program. We've already heard some folks say that in their communities, lease assistance is going to be particularly helpful because they're too small to attract the kind of developer that would construct the project. So we are looking at that now. We are, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Opportunity Enterprise Revolving Fund, once we have selected a project and underwritten it, we'll be able to extend loans that meet the following conditions. The loans may not exceed $17.5 million. That's baked into rule. The interest rate is 60% of Wall Street Journal prime at the time the loan is approved, but there's a floor of 3%, so it will never dip below 3%. The law requires that the term of the loan be not less than 15 years. So there's a minimum of 15 years and it can't exceed 30 years. It also allows for an interest-only period for up to 3 years, and that allows you to construct the facility and to stabilize the operations of the building before you start having to repay principal. The loan may be paid off at any time, in full or in part, without penalty. So we are happy to receive your prepayment. We can't provide a prepayment. We can't force you to prepay, but you may prepay at any time. And then the collateral, we'll need a minimum of loan to value of 80%. And the loan itself may be subordinated to another loan made to the project by a federally insured financial institution. So if your credit union or bank is willing to do maybe 65% of the loan or the fund 65% of the project, we can go up to 80% based on the collateral value. We require a 10% equity contribution, and we do require guarantees from the developers and the partners. The fund itself is $70 million. We opened the application a couple of weeks ago. The deadline is July 31st. We will not look at an application really until that time period. So don't feel that you are rushed to get this in by next week. It won't give you any advantage over getting it in on July 30th. But please take a look at that application because there is some critical pieces there that you want to get a head start on. The board has authorized NMFA to open this application for up to 25% of the fund. So the first round will be competing for up to $17.5 million. As we talked about earlier, that could go to just one project, or it could be that it's going to go to several projects to fill some financing gaps that exist currently. Ultimately, the overall fund is limited in a couple of ways. In addition to only being able to make one loan where a loan can't exceed $17.5 million, there's no more than 25% of the fund that's going to be available to any one county, or 50% to any one economic development sector, industry sector. So we're limited to 25% to a project. We're limited to 25% to a loan. Same thing pretty much. 25% within a county, and then 50% ultimately to an economic development sector. So we don't have 80% of our funds in one industry within the state. Those applicants that have a project but aren't yet ready to hit submit, there's a project interest form that's on the website that we encourage you to fill out, because that's going to be used by the Finance Authority and the OERB in determining when to open the next application round, in determining how much to make available, to figure out whether or not there should be a sliver just put aside for rural projects. All of that is going to be discussed by the OERB once we have more interest back. We know there's some pent-up demand, particularly in the Rio Grande corridor. So that's why they wanted to, make some money available right away. But ultimately, we want to make sure that communities that did not know about the program, 6 months ago and haven't had an opportunity to fully develop their project have opportunities to put that project together. So please have your communities fill that out. If they've got a project but they're not ready to submit, that'll be really important for us in determining what our next steps are. But because of the limitations, if you have a project and you're ready to go with that, the site, you have, feasibility study in terms of who's going to occupy the facility and what those rents will look like, then please, I would encourage you to apply in this first round. Because of course, there's that county concentration. You want to make sure that you get your project in as early as possible. But again, if you don't have time, there's still there may still be an opportunity later. I think that is all I want to say about that program. As I mentioned, there's a two-step process. The first is the application based on projects. So we prioritize projects. That application comes into the NMFA. I would mention that in order to submit it, to even start an application, there's a two-step registration process. So you go in and fill this information out. One of our staffers will then call you to ensure that you're a real person and make some human contact so we can, keep the level of potential attempts at fraud down. We have other tools built into our systems, but there seems to be no substitute for human contact. So we'll be making that contact before you have access to the complete application. Once an application is submitted, and we've reached that July 31st, so we'll take them all at one time, staff from the Economic Development Department and the NMFA will be reviewing them for eligibility and suitability. So we'll be looking at, do they meet the rules and the policies, and are they suitable for assistance from an economic development perspective? So that's the first review. Those projects that meet that criteria will then be reviewed and evaluated using that the evaluation criteria we talked about before that has those 4 elements. They'll be prioritized. The applications will be reviewed then by both the Opportunity Enterprise Project Review Committee and then ultimately by the Opportunity Enterprise Review Board. Those that have that minimum of 60 points and have a moderate readiness determination will then be sent to the NMFA, where a new loan application will be made available to you. And we'll then begin our underwriting process, again, in the order in which they are prioritized. There's 2 applications for different reasons. One of them is that if you're not going to be selected, providing a rigorous amount of potentially personal identifiable information, we don't think is wise. So we want to hold off asking you for more sensitive information until we know that your project's in the running. That's really the most critical reason. The other is that we don't want you to put extra time into an application if you, collecting a lot of tax data and other financial elements until we know for sure that your project's moving forward. And then we'll go through the underwriting process. NMFA has its own internal process, which involves both a staff committee review, a board committee review, and then ultimately our board of directors is the one that will be approving those loans. So let me tell you where you find some information. You can go to our application portal, which is on our website at nmfinance.com. That's where you fill out that registration form and where you ultimately can find other information about the Opportunity Enterprise projects. You can find the statute there, the rules and the policies for both the NMFA loan program and the Opportunity Enterprise review process. You can find those there. The policies that guide how we will structure loans is on that site. If you've got questions, there's a couple of really good places that I'll direct you. One is our OERF at nmfa.net, Opportunity Enterprise Revolving Fund. That's staffed by several of our staffers from our community and economic development area. And then ultimately you can talk to people. Alicia Sanchez, who I believe is on this webinar this morning, and Brian Duboff are the two primary contacts that we would direct you to. They can help answer your questions and get you to another, get you moving in the process. And of course, I can answer questions. But Jason, before we do that, I want to just pull up what the website looks like. Can you see our website? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So you can access it here. It's probably the easiest place to go. And it wants to be slow for me. So again, you can look at a video on how to apply. You can look at the policies. If you have a large document, don't know how to reduce the size of that PDF, you can find some information there. Again, you'll find all of our rules and all of our policies right down to the law on the Opportunity Enterprise Review Board evaluation process, as well as the NMFA's loan process. And then again, if you're not ready to apply but are interested in the program, we strongly encourage you to submit that form so that we have enough information to give to the board and to the legislature when we report back on the progress of this program. I'd certainly be interested to know the kind of pipeline that exists for projects in your communities. They came into this without a strong sense of a pipeline, but with strong knowledge that the need existed. So being able to give them some real data will be helpful in helping them make some good decisions, potentially even refunding the program. So with that, I am going to go back to my slideshow for that and answer any questions that y'all may have. I appreciate your time.
Marquita, I do have a question. Do you have a sense of how many applications are currently been submitted or in the queue?
You know, we've probably got under 10 at this point. I would caution that most folks won't get to the point where they're really applying till closer to the deadlines, the nature of humans.
That's
so,
I was just curious.
In all of our other competitive applications, we sort of see a slow ramp up and then a big spike in those last couple of days.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question, Ralph Mills, Rio Communities Economic Development. How long is the approval process once you submit the application?
You know, it is our anticipation that we should be able to get through this review. Again, if there's 70 applications, I'm going to change my answer. But if there are 20 applications, I would expect that it would take about 4 to 6 weeks for them to be reviewed and sent to the Opportunity Enterprise Review Board. And then depending on the completeness of the loan application, you know, that's a month, 4 to 6 weeks as well.
And if anyone has any questions, just like Ralph, just feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question, or if you want, go ahead and type it in the chat, but feel free to ask now.
Hi, my name is Lisa Brenner. I'm with Sandoval Economic Alliance. And my question regards if there are any limitations regarding utilizing these opportunities for tribal land or HUD zones.
There are no limitations. I would note that tribal owned businesses also have access to the Public Project Revolving Fund. So if what you're looking for is a low cost fund, tribal entities can also access that program. So there are 2 different options from the Finance Authority's perspective and could potentially be a faster option. But there is no limitation. So these loans can be made on tribal lands in any place in New Mexico.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Bruce Armstrong with Greater Gallup Economic Development. And I'm wondering 2 things. One, about 10% equity position required. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? And the other is whether these funds can be used to support infrastructure development for a community-oriented facility.
So the equity requirement is so that the developer, the individual responsible for expending the funds, has shown some personal commitment to the project. And typically there are two ways to see that. One is through the contribution of funding, so we're not funding 100% of the project. And the other is through guarantees. These are state dollars. We need to ensure that they were used prudently. And so a commitment from the developer is our sign of commitment. And if you need funding for infrastructure, this is not the fund for that, because communities are not eligible, like local governments are not eligible for the Opportunity Enterprise Fund itself. But again, the Finance Authority operates the Public Project Revolving Fund. It is not limited by amounts of dollars. Counties doesn't have any other limitations other than your capacity to repay that loan. So we would encourage you to talk to one of our regional finance managers, and we can, we can get some other dollars from other loan programs into the hands of the communities to help build that infrastructure.
David Silverman with Geltmore. Thank you for the presentation. I had a question in regards to, say, for instance, we're applying for a project that has a cost overrun of about 500,000. Is it the intention, do we need to apply for, 750 with the hopes that we get 500, or just apply for what we need? Is the review board going to scale back the amount of funds requested, as a result of what comes in? I'm just trying to gauge, I don't want to ask for any more that we need, but I also, don't want to ask for something, get approved, but not get, as much as, is actually necessary to make the project go.
The opportunity, that's a great question. I thank you for asking that. The Opportunity Enterprise Board is going to send over projects that meet this criteria. NMFA will then do the underwriting, and there's no value to us in underwriting and offering a loan that's less than what you need to complete the project. So, you'll be assigned points, as I mentioned earlier, on leverage. So if you've got more than 51% or 50%, somewhere in there, about half or more of your money's coming from public sources, you're not going to get any points from this program. Your best bet is to leverage this if you were, if you've already got a project plan and a bank is interested in doing some of it, coming to the Opportunity Enterprise Fund for that gap financing would be your best bet. We don't intend to scale that back. It'll be an all or nothing. You can either underwrite it and repay it, and we have the funds available, or we don't. We're not scaling back projects.
Thank you. I'll ask another one if no one's going to ask. Sorry. Best, David Silverman with Geltmore. Is it best to, I guess, emphasize the need that it is, just a gap, if that's truly what it is, because that's what's being prioritized, in the narratives and everything? We have two actually that really fit the mold, and there is bank interest and there's pretty much everything's done. It's just the cost overruns that have become a reality in today's marketplace that have made these hard to get over the goal line. So I guess we want to emphasize that in our narratives.
That's certainly a great narrative in terms of meeting the but-for test. Again, but for this, because the developer may be constrained in what they can contribute to the project. The bank is going to be limited to what they can lend from a loan to value. And this is where we have the gap. That's certainly, if it's a community aligned project, and that's really what's going to give you the highest level of priority. Infill projects will help, small communities will help, but if it's community aligned, the largest number of points you can get is from that community alignment. So we want to see that it fits their economic development plan. If they've given other sorts of incentives, industrial revenue bonds, that's a sign of support. There are a number of ways in which that can be determined. A letter from the mayor's probably not going to cut it. That's not going to be real justification that the community itself is aligned. If you've had community meetings about the project, that will certainly be helpful. So we're looking for really good faith attempts at ensuring that the project meets the needs of the community and is aligned with the priorities of the community.
Thank you.
I would encourage you all to go into those policies and just take a look at them. Again, there's metrics associated with how those points will be determined, even within, for instance, community support or within leverage, project location. All of that is outlined, environmental impact, all of that is outlined with sub-metrics in there. So it's a good read. Too much to go through today, but certainly call us if you have any questions. Having read that yourself, we're happy to walk through that with you.
And David, we're happy to take a third question from you if you have one.
Thanks, Jason. You know me so well. I'll give it a minute or two more.
All right. I know it was a lot of information today, but if there's any clarifying questions or just thoughts you want to put out there, please do so.
And I would note, if you have a question after this is over, because that's usually what happens, please email us at oerf@nmfa.net. That's going to get into the mailboxes of our Community and Economic Development group. Most probably Alicia you'll be talking to, but also Brian. And they'll be able to help you. If you have a project that needs the infrastructure support, you certainly could email there and we'll send you over to the right place, but you could also just email info@nmfa.net. We have a bunch of program related emails as well. If you don't know your regional finance manager person from NMFA, we'll get you lined up and talk to you about what we can do through the Public Project Revolving Fund, which again, we fund about $200 to $300 million of public infrastructure and capital equipment through that fund annually. We go out and issue bonds against some of those loans, so we don't really have a size limitation. So we certainly have funds in that program. We accept applications monthly. So please give us a call if you need infrastructure support at the community level, and we can look to see how we can support that.
I'll ask one more. Sorry, thanks, Jason. You told me I could, so I will. Since we do have two that we're looking to apply for, does it matter to have the same contact person for both, or do you need a separate contact person for both? I just want to make sure we remain eligible. They're two different things in two different places. So
yeah, I should mention that one developer group can submit an application at a time. We are not allowing, the board's not allowing for a developer to submit multiple applications in one round. So you are going to be encouraged to select your most important project. I don't know another way to say it, or the project that you think will fare the best in the policies, but it does not provide for a single developer or ownership group. It may be separate LLCs that actually own the properties, but we're going to look through that to who the development group is. And you will be limited to one application per round. That is a requirement of the OERB.
And Marquita, can you remind me what a round is?
So our application, our application round. So we're in the first application round, and it's a competitive round. Projects will be looked at relative to another project that's being applied for, because we're going to prioritize them and then send them to NMFA for analysis and review. So if the highest rated project needs $17.5 million, the next project will have to sit till the next application round is submitted, and will be reprioritized at that point. It'll be, the decks will be reshuffled when we add in the new applications from the second round. So they're competitive application rounds.
Well, since we have a moment, I failed to thank Jason for setting this all up for us and doing all the technology. It makes it so easy that all I have to do is present and not mess that up. So thank you, Jason.
And to David for all the questions.
Let's see how long I can pause before David asks another one, but
I'm good. Thank you all very much for your time. An exciting program. I do have, some more questions about, the last one that we talked about, but I don't need to belabor it at this moment.
Yeah. Any other questions before we wrap up? Doesn't look like it. Well, I'll let Marquita and Jennifer wrap up then.
Well, I just want to thank you for your time. I think this, Jason, will you be making this presentation available?
Yes.
Okay, so you all will receive a copy of this. Again, go to our website. As we get questions that are frequently asked, we update our frequently asked questions. It is the best place to get the latest information available. So as we know stuff, it is added to our website, either in the form of a document or as a new question to our frequently asked questions. So would encourage you to use those resources, encourage you to talk to our people. And if you have any direct questions for me, I'm certainly happy to answer them as well. But thank you very much for your time. And thank you to Jason and Jennifer for your partnership in this.
And Jason, I made some tweaks to my slides, so I'll send you the latest version shortly.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you. And I'll give you the closing, Jennifer.
Oh, well, thank you all for coming. And yeah, if there's any, my slides will have my contact information. And of course, I think primarily you'll be working with NMFA to answer the tough questions, but always available to help. And that's it. So
Awesome.
enjoy.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.